Hello everybody and welcome to the Great Guild Wars 2 countdown. You know, I've gone through this entire series saying the Great Guild Wars 2 countdown, and every single time thinking, oh, that sounds a little bit pretentious, doesn't it? But hey, hello everybody, there are only 14 or 11 days remaining till the launch of Guild Wars 2. We're kind of coming up to the top 10 now for pre-purchasers, and I still haven't really prepared anything. I wanted to do something on the races and the professions, but last stress test I never actually managed to get in because I logged in at the end of the hour instead of the beginning of the hour because I got my time conversion messed up. So I'm not sure still what I'll be doing for that, but anyway, we'll keep an eye on it. Not much in the way of news really for just Guild Wars 2 in general. I did release that Pale Tree is a Dragon thing at last yesterday. You guys really liked that a lot more than I thought it would get that kind of reception. Everybody really did kind of run away with it. I've had so many personal messages of just huge walls of text about how people have taken the idea and ran with the theory and had other speculation and stuff like that. So I'm really glad you guys did enjoy it. I will, if there is another theory, there are a couple out there I suppose that really grab me, but if there's one that I really do think is really quite cool, I'll definitely do other spotlights on it. At the moment, I don't have many ideas on what they could be, though. I find it quite easy these days to just refute certain theories, where I say, oh, well, this contradicts it straight away, this contradicts it. But maybe it would be a good idea to just take a step back every now and then and look at what's just plain cool. So we'll see what happens there in the future anyway, and I'm glad that you all liked it at the very least. So anyway, without further ado, the footage in the background comes from the Voices 297, or just Voices, I guess, who originally I was going to use a while ago, but sadly he didn't have any enough footage, but he has uploaded some extra stuff now, so we can use him, and thank you very much to him for that. And you can find a link in the description for more if you wish. The feature for today is something quite cool. This is just such a small thing, but when I first saw it I remembered thinking to myself, this is the most incredible thing I have ever seen. It's the look of the Char Cubs. So the Char in Guild Wars 2 had a little bit of a redesign. Actually, I was having a bit of a discussion about this the other day with some of my guildies about how they do look kind of different now in Guild Wars 2 than they did in Guild Wars 1, and partly that's because in Guild Wars 1 there were a lot of different designs for the Char, as it were. You had the very kind of hunched over blade storms from original Prophecy stuff, and then in Eye of the North they introduced a lot more different kinds of Char with a lot of different types of fur and stuff. And it seems when ArenaNet went into Guild Wars 2 they kind of combined these two different designs that we had into the Char we have today. But in addition to that, in addition to all those changes they made there, they also had the job of designing the female Char, as we know, which I've actually talked about already as another feature of a different day, and how they decided to do those, which is very commendable, with how they didn't just throw boobs and makeup on them and put a lot of thought into it. But also they had to design Char Cubs, children Char. So this was something actually very early on. A lot of us were talking about this idea, would there be children in Guild Wars 2? Children in video games in general is something a lot of people were always questioning about, and there are children of every race in Guild Wars 2, and some of them are very funny to see, like the children Asura. They just look like scaled down Asura, just very small Asura, but the most hilarious thing to see is a child Asura next to a Norn, for example, and in particular a Norn that's just opened a box of fun and got like that massive giant thing, so they're huge, and the baby Asura basically looks like an that could get squashed if the Norn trod in the wrong way. So they have done all of these children, but I think in particular the one that really shines to me are the Char Cubs, because we had some concept art, in fact, a long time ago. Some of you might not be aware of this at this point. Some of the earlier stuff we got from Guild Wars 2 were these concept art reels, and you can still go onto ArenaNet's channel here on YouTube and have a look, and you'll find them. And we all know that the art direction is a big part of Guild Wars 2, and they've got some world-class artists there, and obviously concept art was stuff that they had in spades that they could show us early in the game's development. So what they actually did was they produced these, I think there were 4 videos in the end, of just concept art that would just go, it would be this image and then the next one and the next one, and what you'd hear in the background were very ambient noises that I guess are actually in-game. And I remember being quite excited when I first watched these concept art videos, because they really made you feel like Guild Wars 2 was going to be the most immersive game in the world. Not just MMO, it was just going to be so immersive. If you watch those, you'll get really dragged into the sound effects and stuff that they put on there. And while they are still there in game, I'm not getting the same feeling from it, unfortunately. But hey, that's probably to be expected when you're actually playing something like an MMO, where you got people running around talking to you and stuff. So, but in any case, I would very much recommend a watch of these concept art reels. But in particular, one of the shots, to get back to my original point, it was the fact we saw a Char Cub, this concept art of a baby baby Char, and we also saw some children Norn as well, and I believe some devs actually answered when we were saying, oh look, there's concept art of these things. Does this mean that when we first play Guild Wars 2, our new characters, is this what we're going to be starting as children, and we're going to be playing as these things? And the community team actually, I believe, back then did say that it was just an idea and there was no guarantee that children would be in Guild Wars 2, but they are there, and Char Cubs in particular are incredibly cute. I actually cried out loud, I've got to be honest, when I first saw some Char running around in the Black Citadel, some of the first footage we had of the Black Citadel. Just an incredible idea, and they do look so amazing when they're running around. So that's our feature for today, a bit of a fluffy duffy feature, I must be honest, but that's one of the things that caught me out for Guild Wars 2, and that I really liked. A nice little touch they put in. They didn't just scale down the Char, they again redesigned them and created a whole new model with new animations and stuff like that, which is just really cool. So that's the feature for today. Let's jump into the questions. The first one comes from Anton. I don't know whether that is your real life name or whether that's just in memory of the character from Guild Wars 1, but either way, you have an awesome name. Good day, Potatoes. What do you think will happen to Guild Wars 1 when Guild Wars 2 launches? I, for one, will probably never go back to the old game, and for other than nostalgic reasons, I don't see a reason as to why anyone would. I guess it's possible some people may want to play the first game before taking on the new one, but the game will be more dead than ever, and I can't imagine the experience will be the same as it has been. Granted, the game has been fairly dead for some time, but still, do you think the trading, etc. in-game will die off completely? And also, how do you think ArenaNet will keep the servers up? The answer to this is, of course, mostly speculation, but I'd like to hear your thoughts regardless. The success of Guild Wars 1 going forward from Guild Wars 2, I would say, is very dependent on the Guild Wars 1 live team, what they can continue to add to the game and bring to the game. It is very much reliant on new content going into Guild Wars 1. Now, on the one hand, you can say, well, maybe they'd be able to keep the game alive by just continuing what they're currently doing, which is just bug fixes and the odd rebalance here or there, or something that might encourage someone to go to some old dead format. But I feel like maybe that's not enough anymore. I feel like there's a point where they're just not going to have the numbers around to get excited about when a small part of the game comes back alive because they fix something or change the particular balance of something to make it more accessible. I don't feel like that's going to have much of an impact. I mean, you can look at some of the recent updates they did, like in Ergo's Warren, they did an update where you don't need a teleport skill anymore. There's an NPC that you can speak to for a certain part of it. It's like, okay, well, that's all well and good, but people aren't playing Ergos enough to really care, and does that really mean anything for Guild Wars 1 in the long run? I don't think so anymore. I really do think that Guild Wars 1's continuation is very much reliant on more Guild Wars Beyond style stuff going out, and I'm not sure where the live team is at for that. They seem to have moved at least partially over to Guild Wars 2, or there was talk of that for these recent months while the game's being released, but what about when Guild Wars 2 is fully out? Are they going to go back full-time onto Guild Wars 1? And in some ways, I feel like maybe they already have. They are still working on it in some ways, and they haven't said that they're giving up on Guild Wars Beyond stuff. They do still have plans and threads and ideas that they have for going back to Nightfall and doing stuff in Alona around there for it. So maybe we'll see this happen. It just depends how much they can really put forward for it and how much time ArenaNet wants to focus on it. I don't agree, though, that the game will completely die as soon as Guild Wars 2 is out. Here's one thing that people just seem to assume happens with the Hall of Monuments, but doesn't. That you're not locked out of earning those Hall of Monuments rewards once the game launches. You're not actually locked out of it. You can still go back into Guild Wars 1 and earn those after the games come out. There's nothing saying, oh, you have to have it for launch, you have to have it for release. And I feel like as soon as people start to appreciate that, they're probably going to get into Guild Wars 2, play it an arse load, have a lot of fun with it, and get quite attached to their characters and want, you know, more things to show off, more rewards, more things to work towards. And a lot of them will be looking at that section of their achievements that says Hall of Monuments, and it says unavailable, you have not linked to Guild Wars 1, or you are unable to get any of these rewards. And a lot of people will then be motivated to get them, and I think we will see a steady stream of people continue to go into Guild Wars 1, but solely for the Hall of Monuments stuff rather than anything else. If there was ever a culture in Guild Wars 1 of people skipping the cutscene and just rushing to the end of the game, it is worse now than ever before, because people are only there because they want to see the Hall of Monuments rewards. They're not buying Guild Wars 1 saying to themselves, yeah, I'm going to really enjoy myself in this game, I'm playing this game for fun. They're buying it for the rewards that they get at the end, and it is encouraging people to just skip through a lot of stuff. So the question is, with all of these new people that will be going back into Guild Wars 1 for the Guild Wars 2 stuff, even after the launch of the game, which there will be a fair few of them, are these people going to be the same people that will be interested in Guild Wars Beyond content coming out for Guild Wars 1? Are they going to enjoy that? One thing we have to consider is the audience for Guild Wars 2 is, albeit very similar to the audience for Guild Wars 1 because it's set in the same universe and so forth, actually, if you're someone who really loves Guild Wars 2, you're probably not really going to love Guild Wars 1, because even though they're set in the same universe and they have the same name, Guild Wars, they're incredibly different games mechanically, incredibly different. And I say the same thing for anyone who really loved Guild Wars 1, that they probably won't really love Guild Wars 2. If you thought Guild Wars 1 was the perfect game, that ArenaNet got everything right, that you loved the 8 skill system, that you loved how much focus there was on builds, that you loved that it was level 20 and it wasn't about the progression of your character primarily, if you loved all of those aspects of Guild Wars 1, if you loved the instancing of Guild Wars 1, then you're probably not going to like Guild Wars 2 as much as you did the first. So it works both ways, and now I'm just kind of wondering whether those extra people that come into the first game for their Hall of Monuments rewards will really be enticed to stick around and will really begin to enjoy and love the mechanics that are there for Guild Wars 1. I hear more than ever now people talking about Guild Wars 1 as a dated game that they can't quite get into, and for that it does throw into doubt for me where Guild Wars 1 will go, because it's going to have more people, it definitely will, and it will be a fair few years, I would say, until Guild Wars 1 goes down. ArenaNet have said that they will keep the Guild Wars 1 servers up for as long as there are still people playing the game, and I believe them for that. I don't think it would be that much to ask for them to keep the servers up, especially with Guild Wars 2 going forward, and they will have the money from there to keep it going, but eventually they will go down. I don't think it's worth talking about the servers going down, not for a very, very long time. I mean, just because Guild Wars 2 is coming out, it's not a death sentence for the first game, I'd say that much. If you do look in game at the moment though, right now, it's quite interesting to see how prices are shifting with the Guild Wars 1. Ectoplasms have plummeted in price, absolutely plummeted in price. There's been this weird economy in the first game where people have been buying this item, globs of ectoplasm, because they're worth a lot, but they don't actually really need, because they've already got their obsidian armor. And now there are a lot of people going back into game just as Guild Wars 2 is about to launch. There's a ton of people in there right now. It is quite a busy game as we speak, and there's all these people seeing all these ectos in their banks and saying, oh right, well I don't need these, well why don't I sell them? And because so many people are selling all these ectos that have just been unmoving in the economy for so long, the price of them has plummeted. I'm one of those people now that if I did go into Guild Wars 1, I'd be like, well, what do I need all these for? And I'd probably sell them. So it's interesting to see what's happening with the in-game economy there. Diamonds and stuff are going up. That's what I'd be most interested in. I'm not scared that Guild Wars 1 is going to die anytime soon, but I am curious about what it means for prices and the kind of content we're going to be playing as the game goes forward. We'll see what happens though. It's very much dependent on the live team, so fingers crossed they'll provide a lot of support for it, and ArenaNet might even add to their numbers, give them some more employees to do some more cool stuff with the game. The next question is from Nat, who says, I was wondering about the script and the Drudge, you mean the Dredge, by the way. Is there any lore about them, or are they just helpless, marginal people that are there for us to beat up on? I feel like there are always these kinds of communities on the edge of fantasy and other MMOs. We, the heroes, just bully them constantly when they don't seem to be doing any particular harm. Maybe they're the lowliest minions of one of the Elder Dragons, but I just don't think so. It seems like there are enemies only because they don't fit into any of the power structures. They're not useful as allies and not really threatening as true villains, so we chop them up to bits while we wait for bigger, badder enemies to show up. Thanks for your video. I do kind of agree that the script feel like they're filling this role in the, you've always got the rats, okay? MMOs, it's a hallmark of an MMO to go out and kill 10 rats, and the script in some way, even though there are rats in Guild Wars 2, the script in some ways kind of fill that role. They're that enemy, you know, they're just the vermin that you don't really feel bad about fighting. But I'd say that ArenaNet have been pretty good in developing both of these two races as being races that we're both allied with and against. Have you noticed this about Guild Wars 2, that most of these lesser races, the Hylek can be included there and many more, are sometimes against us and sometimes allied with us? They've actually been quite good in that they don't make many races totally black and white. There aren't many races that are always on our side and always against us. I mean, look at the playable races. That would be like your white races, right? In a typical MMO, it would be, oh, these guys are always allied with us, they're always good. Guild Wars 2 doesn't do that. Every single playable race has a faction out there that is against us and that we can fight. It's very rare to see a race that is always good, always on our side. And it's similar with enemy factions as well. It's very rare to see one that is only ever against us, to the point where that's kind of something special about them. Look at the Crate, right? They are a race that are just hateful and we do not like at all, and you never find any allied Crate anywhere, and that's special about them because there are so many other races that have got good dynamics about them that sometimes put them on our sides and sometimes put them against us. The Crate to just be so hate-filled makes them interesting, and that's another thing for the minions of the Elder Dragons too. The Risen, you never find allied Risen, but that kind of exemplifies just how undynamic they are and how hate-filled they are and how unjust and how unreasoning they are, which I think is quite good. But going back to the script Script and the Dredge. There is more lore about them. There have been blog posts on these guys. The Dredge in particular are quite an interesting race because they were there in Guild Wars 1, so I've got a bit of a backstory. They do have this history of being enslaved by the Stone Summit. When we first met them, they were the slaves to the dwarves, and there was this air of them becoming freedom fighters, and now we find them in Guild Wars 2, and they've risen back up against the dwarves, and they are understandably hostile to people that are encroaching on their territory, or what they perceive to be their territory. So there is a lot of interest there with the Dredge, and I do think that they are quite a dynamic race that aren't just, oh, they're only here to fight. And both the Script and the Dredge together as well, I think, fill quite an important niche in the story, in that these are races that exist in the depths of Tyria. We don't have much about the depths of Tyria. We have that the Asura came from them. In Guild Wars 1, that was pretty much it. We had that the Dredge were an underground race as well, and this awesome idea of a tunnel, by the way, that supposedly goes from the southern Shiver Peaks all the way to Cantha, like a tunnel that goes under the unending ocean and stuff, dug by the Dredge that they travelled through, which is a really cool idea too. But we didn't have much past that on the depths of Tyria, so the Script are very important, I would say, in giving more life and more lore and more story about what's actually going on down there, so it doesn't just feel like this excuse of a region, an excuse for where the Asura have been and now where they've come from. There needs to be a lot of lore about the depths of Tyria. It is a huge region. It is a massive part of Tyria as a planet. We didn't have much lore about them, so I think it's very important that the Script and the Dredge exist as being races that supposedly came from down there and have ties down there. So eventually when we do get there, ArenaNet have got these threads and these races they can spin off of, and hopefully will introduce to us a few more new races as well to really build up a story about what it was like under there. So no, I disagree really that these guys are just there for us to beat up. There is a lot of lore about them. I have covered them on my channel. If you look, I've got a whole playlist there of me playing Guild Wars 1 dungeons while talking about Guild Wars 2 blog posts, which is very much to do with races and stuff like that. So you can find it all there. But yeah, I would definitely not say they're redundant races just there for us to hit. And ArenaNet have been quite good really at making these multifaceted races where sometimes we'll find Dredge that we like and sometimes we'll find Dredge that want to chop our heads off. So we'll chop theirs off. Anyway, there you go guys. That's a great Guild Wars 2 countdown for today. Thank you very much for watching and I will see you tomorrow.